Okay. Um, Good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes, can hear
Okay.
you. Go ahead.
Let's just start. So in our previous class, we looked at we're actually setting up our app, and we configured ES build. We added our database. And today we will be setting up Vitest for unit testing. So let's just begin already. Okay, so today it's all about our aims and objectives for today. Developing our app today. So we'll be setting up Vitest for testing. So let's check out Vitest briefly. Vitest generation testing framework, the Vite native testing framework, and all of that. So we can go to the guide. They install Vitest as a development dependency, and we already did that. So all we need to do now is to configure the config file. So let me zoom in a bit. So now we create a new file. Okay. Let me just, great. Okay, so now let's configure Vitest. We have reference types is equal to Vitest, like this. Should be string like this. Find config from Vite. Import define config from Vite, and this is also complete. Okay, so can you hear me now? So I'm saying we should include, we are testing, we test all the files in the test.ts, all the file in the test directory that's end with .test.ts. And our testing environment is Node. And we have a set of files here, which is an empty array, and we'll leave it as an empty array for now. We'll leave it as an empty array for now. Then we have restore mux, which will restore our mux each time we run our test. So mux are just objects we use to emulate the real functionalities of our app. Like we have a user or the notes we want to create, we can create notes and then use it to test our app. So those are just mux. So, and the next option, we want to also measure coverage. But first of all, let us set up the setup files. We come to this directory here, and then we create a folder. And then inside of this folder, or let's say we create a folder and we call it setup. So inside of this setup, we create another file, which we call setup. Let's just say setup env, because we're setting up an environmental setup tests. Okay, this is a setup test env.ts. So inside of this file, now what we do is we import a couple of things. Just for import from vi-test like this. And inside of this, we say after each and vi. So even though we've already instructed vi-test to restore all our mux after each test, we also set up this file is run before each test in our, before each of our tests is run. So we can say after each, and then we pass in a callback function, and then we simply say vi restore mux. So after each test, we want to restore all mux. Okay. Okay, restore all mux, and then this is not, we do something like this. After each test, restore all mux. So this is all we need to do inside this thing for now. So that after each of our tests, and we have other method like before all or after all, that is, or before any of our tests is run, do this, or after all our tests are run, do this, or something like that. But for now, we have after each, we want vi-test to restore all mux. So we come back to our vi-test config file, and then inside here we see this is inside our test slash setup slash setup test env.ts setup files. So that is where our setup files is run. And this file will be run before any after each of our tests. Or let me say this file will be run before our test runs, so as to clean up things. That is, after the test runs, if you want to run another test, this file will first of all run to restore mux and then do other things. Okay, so now I think we should just head over to our source directory in our test, create an index test ts file, and in here we can import from vi-test. We can import it and expect. Then we can say it, we say should add two numbers like this, and then we pass a callback function, and then we say expect let's say 1 plus 1 to be like this. And then down here we can come to our package.json to see if we set a script for this. You have a script for tests, test, and then we say vi test like this. Then we can say npm run test. Okay, if you don't get an okay, so our test is passing, and then you can see source index TS should add 2 numbers, and then do. Okay, so if we come back here in our test index TS file and then change this to 3, our test will now fail, and then we get an error. Okay, expected 3, but received, sorry, expected 3, but received 2, because the value to be received 2 instead of 3. We were expecting the result to be 3, but the test is failing because 1 plus 1 is not 3, but 2. And then if we change this to 2, our test will now pass. Okay, so we've written our first test. Now it's time for coverage. So let's hop over here and then check vi test coverage. Vi test coverage guide. And here we see vi test support native code coverage via V8 and instrumented code coverage via Istanbul. So these are two, V8 are the capable features of node features for test coverage. Okay, so now that we added our coverage, we use V8 as our provider, and then we exclude our tests from our coverage. So now we want to exclude all our tests from our coverage. We'll say test, then everything in our test folder, we want to exclude it from our coverage. And then we want to include, let's say everything in our source directory that ends with TS. We'll say like this, TS. We want to include everything that ends with TS in our source directory. And then all, we want to cover all for files that we tested, for the lines that we've not tested and all of that. So if we come back here to our package.json, and then we add, for coverage, we say test coverage, and then we say vi test dash coverage like this. And then we say npm run test coverage like this. Okay, so now we can see this this thing here, this table is showing us all files inside the source directory, because we specified it here. We want to include everything inside of the source directory. So we've not tested anything inside of our source directory, and it will have the functions, the lines, uncovered lines in the app tiers 1 to 9, in the index tiers 1 to 38, and all of that. So we are now seeing the things that we've not tested. So the next thing we have to do here is to The next thing, we've added our Vitest config file. We've added our coverage already, and then the next thing is to add Vitest UI. Okay, so now let's go back to here. Let's check out Vitest UI. So we have our Vitest UI guide. So here we'll simply copy this command. npm, let's close our test coverage and then install our Vitest UI as a development dependency. Great. Now, so we can come to our package.json and then add another command. Test UI. Then we say Vitest -UI like this. And then if you run npm run test UI, our browser will now pop up with this thing here. Okay, so now we have a dashboard for our test, and now we only have one test. We have 0 failing. We have one total test and one test passing. So our test took 270 milliseconds to run. So we can basically change it to light theme and dark theme. You can equally rerun our test. Now our test is running and then it's also passing. So now if you go back to our test here, where's our test? And then change this to 3 and then save our file. If you check our dashboard, then we have 0 passing and we have 1 failing. So if you click on our test, and then we can see the report here. It should add 2 numbers and then it's assertion error, expect 2 to be 3. Object is equality. So if we look at the module graph, we only have index, test, yes. And if you look at the code, and it's pointing to this one, that this is where the error is coming from. And then we don't have anything on our console. Okay, so this is basically the UI. If you run our test again, it's failing. If you come back here and then undo this change back to 2, and our test is now passing, and then we have all tests passed in this file. You can see everything is now passing. This is the report and all of that. So this is how to set up the Vitest UI and the Vitest coverage. So basically, we are good now with our test. So we'll write our first test. So inside of our test directory, let's stop this, clear the terminal, and then write our first test, which will be load env test ts. So what we want to test is in our utils folder, we have this load env function. So in our previous class, we were having an error with our load via env. Instead of end line, I was actually doing this. It's not a forward slash, it's a backward slash. So after the class, I took a look at the function and then rectified the problem. So it's a backward slash, this is end line. So our function is now working as expected. So we want to actually test our function. So how do we test our function? So we want to test, what are we actually testing? We want to actually test if this function is working correctly. So for this function to work correctly, it will call the fs module, call the read file sync function, and then read the contents of the file and then perform these operations on it. So first of all, in our load env test.ts file, what we want to do is we want to import fs from NodeJs. And we also want to import the function we are testing, load env. Load env is coming from /load env. So this is the function we want to test, and then we also import this function from Vitest. So we import it, expect, and describe. We'll also import vi because we want to mock the fs module. So in here, we say describe. This is a test block. This is a test block. And then we say load env. So inside of this load env, we have two tests. This is a block of tests. And then the first one, it should be it. And then we say should call read file sync function once, like this. And then it will take a callback function as well. They will copy this, paste it, and then change the title here to something else. We can say should load environmental variables from the env file, like this. So how do we test if the function is called once? Okay, so what we want to do, we will spy on this fs, and then spying on the fs, we spy on the read file sync functions, to be specific. So what we will do is we say vi spy on fs. Then we say look at all. Once we spy on fs, then it returns all of the method on the fs object. So we say read file sync. We want to spy on the read file sync. So while spying on it, what do we want to do? And then we want to spy on the read file sync, just like that. We don't want to do any other thing, just spy on the function. Then we want to ensure it is called once. Then we will load the env. So while you load the env, remember that when you call this function in the env, this read file sync is called once. So now we are spying on the function. So once we load this, the function is called once. The read file sync is called once to read the content of the env file. So now that we've called the function, what do we want to do? We want to expect fs.read file sync to have been called times 1. You understand? We want to we want this function to be called once. So we want the read file sync function to be called once, because once you call the you execute this file, this function will be called once. We don't want it to be called twice. Now let's try npm run test. Okay, so we have 2 test files and then 3 tests, and then 3 tests are passing. That is this one and the other one. So the files that we have here, we have load env test. Then if we save this file, now only the load env file will be shown. Now we have a test block of load env. The file name is source test load env test.ts. And then we also have a function of load env, a test block of load env. And inside of this test block, we have 2 tests. Should call read file sync function once, and then, but if we change this thing now to 2, that means we're expecting the function to be called twice. Now, if you copy this one and paste, this time around the function will be called twice, and then our test will pass. And if we change this to 1, our test will fail because we're calling the read file sync function twice. Now, if you remove this thing, then our test is passing. Okay, so even though we're calling the read file sync, we're not sure if we are reading the contents of the env file. So let's copy this and bring it down here. Read file sync, and then this time around, we want to mock the return value. Want to mock the return value of the read file of this function, this load env function. So if I mock return value, and then inside of this mock return value, we want to pass this. I earlier talked about mocks, so we can define our mocks in here. We can say const env mock is equal to, and then we can pass in our mocks here. We can say key one is equal to value 1, key 2 is equal to value 2, like this. And then we can come in here, instead of writing it in here directly, we can say env mock like this. So want to mock the return value of this read file sync function. Now, what we do is we invoke the load env function, because this is the function we want to test. So after invoking the function, then we expect process env key1, sorry, to be value 1. So let's copy this and paste it here. This time around, let's remove this and then make it key2 to be value 2. So now what we are doing here, we are assuming these are the values in our env file. See, the key here is a value and the key is a value. So key1 equal to value 1, key2 is equal to value 2. So we are spying on this function. So once the function is called, we want to mock the return value. So when you call the read file sync function in this load env, what it does is it reads the contents of the env file. So once it reads the contents of the env file, it then processes it and then sets the process, then it sets the content of the file to this process env. So what we are doing here is, once we are spying on this function, we are spying on it and then we are monitoring the return values. So it's reading this from the env file, then returning it. So once it returns, the function will then capture these values and then set it on the process env. So now we are expecting the process env to have this key and this value. So that is why we are saying key1 equal to value 1. And then if we change this here to 3, our test will fail. And then let's see the message here. We're expecting value 3, but then we are getting value 1. And then the error is here. This is pointing to this error. Then if we cancel this and then we run npm run test UI, and then okay, it's disconnect. Okay, and now we have 2 tests, and then this one is failing, and then in the index test is passing. But if we come over here, change this value back to value 1, and then we have our test passing. Should call function, and then this one, if you click here, you have this is the report. You have the module graph. Sorry, the module graph. We have index TS, and then we click here, we have the module graph. We have the load env test, the load env.test, and then this is the file we are testing, and then we have also our code. This is the code for our test. Okay, so now we've tested our function and we've verified it's working perfectly well. So now this is all the tests. So if you run npm run test coverage, now we have some results in our coverage. Okay, so now in our source/utils folder, we have the load env test, and everything in the source utils folder is tested because we only have this file load env, and then inside of the file load env, everything is 100% tested. We have tested the file and we've tested all the functionalities. We've mocked the function and expect that the function is called once, and then we've also spied on this function, and then the process, this load env function is working as expected. So basically, now in the branch here, we have all files in the source. The branch here is, we have tested 57.14% in this branch. And the functions here, 25%, the line 16.48%, the statement 16.4, so blah, 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 blah. So now it's showing red here. These ones, we've not covered anything, but then it's showing us that, okay, so we need to test our database index TS and the rest. So we're now written our second test, and then we've seen how we can test, we can write a test. So now the next thing to do here is super test. We want to also test, what we're mainly testing in our app is the APIs. So super test, let's hop over to, let's say, it's super test, not a super test. Super tests like this. Okay, so inside of our super test, we click on the super test. it's an npm package, and then we come over here. So the motivation with this module is to provide a high-level abstraction for testing HTTP, while still allow you to drop down the lower-level API to provided by the super agent. So we'll simply install super agents. We call it like this, and then we do other things we want to do. So in order to learn how to use super, let me just get over here, copy this, and then install it as a development dependency. We install it sharply, and then in here, we want to test our, let's say, our app. Okay, yes, we want to test our app. Then we come over here and we see app test TS. And that is the reason why we had an index function and then an app function. We're exporting the app. Now you know the reason why, because we want to import app from app so we can test it. So what do we have in our app? We have there, when you make a request to the index file, we send back a text like JSON, and then the text will be hello KodeCamp, and then this. We will close the connection. So in here we have a describe. We import describe and it. Import this from bytest. So we have describe and we have it like this. So what else do we need to test? And then we import super request. Import request from super test like this. Okay, so now that I've imported all of this, we also need expect, because this is what we'll be using to perform assertions on our test. So we have a describe block, and then we have get the index file. So inside of this describe block, we have two tests. We say it, and then we say should return status code of 200 when we make a request to the get, when we make a get request to the index route. And in here, this is an async function because we're making requests are asynchronous. And then let's just copy this, paste it down here, and then in here we'll say should return hello KodeCamp like this. When we make a get request to the index route like this. So let's first of all write our first test. Then we say const response is equal to await request app. Okay, cannot find. Do you mean real? Okay, so request, no request. Request like this. Okay, so now TypeScript is happy. We'll come over here, then we'll say expect response the status to be 200. Okay, now we say npm run test. Okay, now expect the response of status to be 200. So, okay, we're getting undefined. We're expecting 200, but getting undefined. So let's check our app. Okay, the status code here is 200, and then so why are we getting okay, so we say get. We are forgetting, I just realized what's the get method here. Get index route. We're making a get request to the index route. Okay, so now our test is passing. She returns status code of 200 when we make a request to the index route. Now it's returning the status code of 200. Now if we change this to like 500, our test will fail. And then you see that we are expecting 500, but what is returning is 200. Okay, so now our route is working as expected. And now we want to actually test the data it's actually returning. Then we say it should return hello KodeCamp when we make a request to the index, a get request to the index route. So let's copy this sharply, paste it over here, and then change this to request text, not request status, request text. Because what we are sending here is a text / plain, not text / JSON. Text / plain. Is it text / plain or plain / text? Okay, text / plain. Then we expect this to be, then we say this is a regex. Hello KodeCamp. Okay, so let's see. To be, okay, let's remove this regex. Since it is not supporting regular expressions, let's say hello KodeCamp like this. So our test is now passing. And then if you remove the P at the end, our test will fail. So it is expecting hello KodeCamp, but we're passing in hello KodeCamp. So let's add the P. So we tested our index route, and then our test is passing. So now let's stop this and then check the test coverage. npm run test coverage like this. Okay, so now we can see in our app tiers, we've tested everything in our app tiers, 100, 100, 100%, and our utils. Now we can see that those things that we've tested are green, and the ones we've not tested appears to be in red color. So the branch for the source folder, we've tested 50% of the code in the source folder, and then the branch 71.42% in this branch. Okay, so now at least you have an idea of what tests are. So you shouldn't be annoyed if in our subsequent classes we do not write tests. I just wanted to introduce this to you, but definitely we'll write 1 or 2 tests due to time. I'll be a little bit faster. Then I just wish we can have time to cover all of these things in depth and then go over it gradually. But since there's no time, we'll just have to rush. Please, you should just Anthony, test. These are not those things you just jump into and then understand at once. First of all, you have to understand test theory. Testing is just, in layman understanding, is you are just trying to make your app do what you expect it to do. So before you test, now if you hop over to this app, what we are doing here, if you make a get request to our app in the index route, we're expecting it to return a status code of 200. And then we're expecting it to return the text content of hello KodeCamp. But are we sure it is doing this without starting our app and then using Postman to test this? Okay, even if you want to use npm run dev, and then if you come over to Postman, so our app is running on port 8080. So if you come over to Postman, then add a new request. In this new request, let's say we have this, okay, 88 here. And then you make a get request. Let's just make a get request here. Then we send this. Now we have hello KodeCamp. And then if you look at this, let me just do this and then zoom in a little bit. Okay, so if you look at this status, you have 200 okay, standard response for successful HTTP request. And then it took 14 milliseconds for our request to process. Then we have our content here, hello KodeCamp. So now we are sure that our app is doing what we want it to do. But not always you want to do your app and then come over there and then test something like that. So in order not to use Postman, we are making sure our app is doing what we expect it to do. So that is why we're writing test for it. So what we are doing here, you say should return a state. First of all, when you visit your app in the index route, it will return a status code of 200 and the text of hello KodeCamp. And you can also test for the content type. Are you sure your app is returning the content type of text / plain? Then if you check the headers here, we have the content type of text / plain. The connection is keep alive and all of that. So the body, we don't have any body, we can send, and then we even Postman, we talk about Postman later on, but not now. Let's just try to complete this. Okay, so now that we've tested, Anthony, you just have to take your time. I just wish we can have enough time to like go over these things in depth, but this is the best I can do because of time. And I'm trying to rush so we can catch up things. Okay, so basically, this is how we can use Postman to verify our code. So now that we verified our code, then let's make the request. Okay, now that we verified our code, let's go back. So what is the next item on our list over here? Okay. Now we are done with tests and we've set up tests in our app. So what exactly is the next? Okay, so it's time for development. I'm happy we've gotten to this stage and then it's time to start developing our app. And then let's just do that. Okay, so now we hop over to, we first of all set up our utils and errors. And then I have an error folder here. Since our app is not that big and then we'd like to make things easier, let's just delete this folder, come to our utils, and then make a file of errors, TS. And then I wanted to finish building everything before making abstractions, but then we'll be making abstractions as we are building the app. And if you don't know what abstractions are, you can quickly check abstractions as they're just abstractions. So you should just basically try to Google something or do something to understand what abstractions are. But first of all, we want to write in our slides. We have utils and errors. So we have our utils files and then the database error, internal server error, not found error, bad request, or an unauthorized error. So we have to first of all set up these errors before we can continue. So we'll get to understand why we're doing this in just a bit. And then in our errors, we also have a response file, a response util file, and then we say response TS. So what exactly are we doing in this response file? So what we'll be doing in this response file is we define functions that will help us send responses to the client. But first of all, we have to import from node HTTP. Anthony, you learn a lot. Don't worry, after this camp, you'll be able to work anywhere. Okay, so now we have server response. This is one we need, yes, server response. Now inside of this, what we want to do here is we need another folder in this source directory. And then I like to call it constant, but you can call it types. I call it constant because anything that doesn't change this, I would like to store it inside of this file. Then in here, we have our types TS. And inside of our types TS, we can say enumerate HTTP, is it HTTP? Okay, let's first start with status code. Status code, then we can see we have the OK, which is equal to OK. We have another status code of is it not found? We have created, not found. We have a status code of created. Nope. And I'm trying to my head is okay. We have status code of OK, and OK is 200. The status code are not the actually the HTTP method. Okay, I'm mistaking codes for method. And then we also have created, which is 201. And we just enumerate the ones we need. And we need also bad request. The bad request, this is equal to 400. Unauthorized, which is equal to 401. We have forbidden, which is equal to 403. And we have not found, which is equal to 404. And you can check out server response codes to know about all these codes. And then we have internal server error, which is equal to 500. And then in order not to, then we export this status code. We see the reason why we're doing this in just a bit. Then we see export enum. Let's just finish with the enum file so we don't have to come back here and then start doing things. So HTTP methods. They will say these are, we have 5. We won't be using all the 5, but we just make it. We have get, which is equal to, we have more than 5, but the ones we'll be using in this app are 4. And then, but we'll just list 5 so we can get to understand what's happening. You have get, you have post, which is equal to post. We have patch, which is equal to patch. Put, which is equal to put. And then we have delete, which is equal to delete, like this. And then we'll enumerate the parts so as to simplify things for export enum parts, which is equal to object of index equal to the index route. We have auth, the auth part, which is equal to /auth. And then we have notes, which is equal to /notes, like this. And then we are done with the types file. If we need any types for any other thing, we'll come here and then define those types, export, and then reuse it in our application. So now that we've defined all the HTTP status codes and HTTP methods, and then the path, let's head over to our utils folder and then head over to the response file. And inside of our response file, what we want to do is, now we import status code from constant types, like this. So we have our first function, export function, and then we say send response. So what this function does is it takes the response status code and data, which is an object. Data is an object. So we're getting an error. What is the response? The response is server response. And then the status code is simply a number. Okay, so what we want to do in our function. So before we continue writing our function, okay, let's finish writing our function before we write documentation for our function. So what we want to do is we'll say .write head, the status code, and then the content type is content type is application JSON. We want to send, we'll be only sending JSON data, JSON. Okay, so now we want to write the content type to be application JSON, and then the status code will be the one we pass into this function. And then we'll say res and JSON stringify data. The data will pass to this function. Well, you don't want to be writing this function always. So now let's time for to document our function. We'll say, okay, now let's document our function. So here is this is the server response. And then in here, you can see server response like this. So status code here is basically a number. And then we can see this is a number, or you can say server status code or anything you want to see. Then in here, you can see this is an object. And then we can see object or data. So these are the parameters. You can see as param, and then this parameter is response, the server response is a number, this one is an object. And then over here we can see send response to client. The documentation should be very, very clear for other developers to be able to read your code. Okay, so this function basically returns returns of void. This function basically returns void. Now, if you hover over this function here, say JS type may be moved to TypeScript types. So if you say annotate with JS if you do this, and then it will add void here because this function is returning void, and then your function is now complete and it will work as expected. So I will not document any other function, but this is a best practice because once you look at this function, you don't want to, you first of all look at this, okay, server response number, the status code is a number, and this one is an object. Okay, so what is this function doing, blah, 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 blah. And then you basically understand what the function is doing. So we have another helper function here, is send success. So what this send success is doing is, it takes it takes this, the server response. So we have to be copying and pasting some things. Takes the server response here. Yeah, okay, export function, send success. So it takes a server response, and then it takes in an object as well. So this object here is a status code, and then we'll default the status code to status code dot okay. Now you see the reason why we wrote the enumeration. So if you try to say, oh, now TypeScript will throw an error. So status code is declared, but value is never read. So property 0 does not exist on type of status code. And then you can say something here like status codes. Nope. Okay, you can say you can leave it as okay. Change it to okay, and then TypeScript is happy. And then we have other we have the message. Then we can default the message to success. And then we have another data. We can default the data to null. Now let's write, then we can come over here and say interface I send response like this. So it's a good practice to prefix send response with I. I mean, interfaces with I. So here we say status code is a number, and then status code is a number, then message is a string, and then we have another one, data is an object or null. And then all these are optional. All these are optional. And you see why they're optional when we start using it. Then you can come over here, and then here you see I send response. So now we've provided special. Now, if you pass in another thing to this function like st, then you get an error. It's a property that does not exist on iResponse. Okay, so now let's remove this st here. So why we remove this st? Now we want to make use of this send response. We say send response, and then inside of this send response, we pass the response, the status code, and then an object with a success. So this object represents the data we are passing in here. So this object has a success, true, and then we have the data. If there is data, then we return the data. If there's no data, we return null. Even though we specify null here, it's still a good practice. And then we have a message. Let's just say message. The message will be passed in from here. So message is default to success. So if you don't pass message, this is basically message will default to success. So this data here, the data in here is the data we are passing as an object to this function, to this send response. So we have, the data here that it will be sent, it will be stringified and sent to the client is the one we're swapping here is an object with success, message, and data object. So now we have our send success function. Then we have another one, which is send function, send error. And this send error, let's just copy this one. Oops, let's just copy this one here, bring it down here, and then change this one to I send error. Change this one to send error. And then change this one to I send error as well. And then in the error function, we have some changes to make. The status code should be status code dot, we default it to internal server error. And then the message should be, we default this message to internal server error like this. And then there's no data because this is an error and then we're not sending data. So in our send response, we have the status code, and in the object, we send success, change the success to false. And then we'll remove the data because there's no data, and then we'll leave it with the message. So if we don't pass in any message, the message will default to internal server error. But if you pass in an argument of message, it will override this. So now we have our functions, the send error, send success. So this send response, we are basically using this in the send success and in the send error. So now let's move over to errors. So now let's implement our errors. So import type from node HTTP. And then we see, here we have server response. Okay, so we also want to import from the response, our send error function. Then we say send error. So we import it from the response, and then we also import status codes because we want to use the status codes here as well. Status codes from constant type HTTP. And what we want to do is our first function should be export function note found. It should be a note found error. Let's name it note found error. And then it will take in a response of server response, and message will be a string, and then we default the message to note found like this. So this is a function, and inside of this function we send error. They will pass in the response so that the error can use, and then the status code here will be status code dot Here will be status codes dot node found. And then the message, we default the message here. And then if we don't pass in any argument of message, what will default? It will default to node found. Okay, now let's copy this and then paste it a few more times. We have node found. Okay, let's paste it. Paste. Okay, I think we should just come back and say change this to bad request. Change this one to unauthorized. Unauthorized. Okay, and before I continue, things are beginning to get, should I say, messy or complex. So you should pay maximum attention. And this is the reason why I was advising you to at least grab the basic concepts. Now we are going. So now we have the unauthorized, and we have the internal server error. Okay, so now our node found error is complete. But then if you come over to the rest and this bad request error, what we want to change here to the message should be, the default message should be a bad request. Then the status code should be status code dot bad request. Okay, yes, we have forbidden, but then unauthorized. Maybe we shouldn't use the forbidden at all. And then we have here, the message here should be unauthorized. With the status code unauthorized. And then here we have the internal server error. Internal server error. And then the status code should be status code internal server error. Okay, so now that we have our functions properly arranged, I guess we are done with the utils and utils and error. So let's get back here. We are done with our utils and our error helper functions. So now it's time to implement our route. So let's head over to our route. And in our routes, we have basically two routes. The first route here is auth TS. The second one here is node TS. So first of all, we hope in our controllers, let's come over to our auth. Then we have an index file in our routes. Index TS, and we'll see how we will use that index TS in a bit. So first of all, we'll start with the auth TS to implement our routes in the auth TS. So we import from node HTTP, that is the incoming message, and then the server response. Though I'm installing, I'm importing all of this directly, but then it's a good practice to specify type, because these are types. Import type this from this. These are types. Even though you don't specify, but you still work. But for clarity and readability, it's always good to specify them. And then we also import HTTP. Is it HTTP method? Yes. And then also our path from the constant types. So we get over here. We also need to import our nodes found error from utils error. And we also need, what else do we need in this file? Okay, so that's all for now. Then we export a function. Then we call it handle auth. So handle auth is our route name. And then this will take in a request and then response. So it doesn't know what request and response are. And then we say, here is the incoming message, and this one is the server response, like this. And then in here, we will write a function that we take, we first of all destructure the request, and then write a function that we take that request and then turn it to a path, and then we'll make it to do something useful with it. So basically, how to go about this function is saying we abstract this function so we can use it in the utils and in the controllers folder. So what we want to do here is we want to basically say this is equal to request. So we want to destructure the method URL and headers from this request. So they will want to pass the URL. Some of you will be saying, why didn't you use import URL from node URL? And then you say something like URL pass. Now, hover over this function. Now you see the URL pass method takes a URL string, pass it, and returns a URL object. But then if you come down here, you see it is deprecated. Use the WhatWag URL API instead. That's we should use, they say we should use this. So it is deprecated. If you use it in your app, you are prone to attack, to CSRF attacks, and all of those attacks, because it is deprecated, the API is loosely coupled, so it is deprecated. So we want to find another way to do that. We are using what they say we should use. Pass URL is equal to new URL. And then in here, we pass the URL. So if there's no URL, an empty string, then it will default to HTTP // and then we say headers host. Okay, now in here we say log past URL. Okay, now I will import this handle out in our app because most of us now are getting confused. So handle out, copy that, bring it in here, and then pass in the request and response argument. So now we start our server npm run dev. Okay, I think it shouldn't be here because we've not made a request. Okay, let's just go to a postman here and then make a request to the index route and then come over here, check. So there's something I want to show you. Most of you will be asking, why are we using HTTP headers host if the URL is undefined? We default it to empty string, and then we will use this. We append this to the empty string that we just passed in here. And then you can take a look at the URL objects and then get to understand what's going on here. So if you look at this, we see headers. In here, you will see this is the URL, and then we have the href, the origin, and then we have the host. So inside of the headers, we have the host. Look at the host. The host is localhost 8080. So the host is the combination of the host name and the port. We have the port here and the host. So we have host localhost 8080. So that is the reason why we are preparing it with HTTP : then localhost 8080. So we want to destructure the past URL. We want to get it from this URL. Since the URL here, if the URL is undefined, and then we'll do something like this to get from this URL. So inside of this object, what we want to do is we want to get specific things from this past URL. So the first thing we want to get is just const path is equal to past URL dot path name. We want to get the path name. So this time around, let's log path name or just the path. Okay, now this time around, let's make this a request once more. once the server starts. Let's go to Postman, send this, come back here, and then you see that the path is the index route. So we're getting the path. So this is the path we are on now, the index route. So we want to make the path to make some other things. So it is time now to abstract this function. We want to abstract this function. So how do we abstract it? Let's copy this. Just copy the content, come over to its use, and then make another file of helpers tiers. And inside of this helpers tiers, then we'll export function, and then we call the function format request URL. And then this function will take in only the request, which is the incoming message from HTTP. So let's just automatically node HTTP like this. And then inside of this function, we'll paste this thing that we just copied from there. So request, we'll grab the request, and then we'll destructure the method URL and headers. So for the URL and the headers, we're using it in this new URL object. So what we want to return now is we will return two things, the method and the path. This is what we want to use. Now, if we come back to our auth, instead of doing all of this gibberish here, we say const empty object is equal to format URL. And then we call our function, then we pass in the request object. So instead of here, we'll just destructure our method and our path, and then we are good to go. And then this time around, you can log method and then path. So Anthony, you are asking what abstraction is and what abstractions are. So this is basically an abstraction. You are using this function here, and then you know that this function, when you call it and then you pass in the request, what you will get in return is the method and the path. So you don't know the implementation details of this function, but you know that this is what you get back when you call this function and pass in the request. The implementation details are being abstracted. That is, they are being taken away for your simple usage of the function. So that is basically an explanation to abstractions. So now that we have our function, let's make a request to the index route once more and then see the method and the path. So we've made the request to the index route, and then we have the method is get, and the path is the index route path, which is /. Okay, so now that we have this, let's do away with this as well. Okay, so now that we have this basically set up, now it's time to properly set up our handle route properly. Let's properly set it up. So inside of our handle route, we have 3, or let's say 4. We have sign up, sign in, and then we have the main route, and then we'll get to understand what the main route is all about. And we will also have sign out, the sign out controllers. We have 4 controllers. We have the sign. So now we have to determine what to do with all of these controllers. So we'll start checking if path is exactly equal to, let's interpolate this. If path is exactly equal to path.auth, you know that path.auth is /auth, right? And then we say /sign up. So this is how we try to simplify things while we build other things. If it is this, and then the method is exactly equal to HTTP method.post. And now you can see how we are simplifying our code with all the helper functions and the types we've written. Then we'll see handle sign up, because we've not written a controller for this sign up. We'll add another check. Inside of this check, then let's copy this path here, bring it in here to handle sign in. If the path is exactly path like sign in, and the method is post, because when you want to sign up, you post with data. When you want to sign in, you also post with data. So in here we say handle sign in like this. And then we say else if, let's also copy this. I think we copied that earlier, so we don't need to copy it. Then if the path is slash mean, /mean, and then notice that what the path, if we say if the path is exactly path.auth/mean, remember that path.auth is something like this /auth and then /mean. This is what we are referring to here. So we don't want to write /auth every time. We just want to use that one in order not to make mistakes. And then we say handle mean. So in here, the mean route is the method for the mean is get, not post. Because after you sign in and send back the token, they'll make a request to the mean route to get the user data. And then else, if this time around, okay, let's copy this again, bring it over here. And then if the path is path / sign out, and the method is get as well, we want to sign out to make a get request to this route and then sign out and say else, you see handle sign out, and then we say if the method is unknown, if the path, the route they are making a request to is unknown to us, we simply say node found. So we pass in the response, and then we say auth route node found. This is a response and not request, like this. Okay, so in here we log path auth. Then let's copy this, bring it over here, bring it over here as well, bring it over here. Okay, so now let's test this out with Postman. So now we go to /auth/sign in. Okay, but I think that this won't work because we've not handled it in the app. So before this, let's go back to the app and then try to handle this route. So going back to the app, in app, let's leave this. Okay, we're done in implementing our handle auth route. So now let's go back to our app, and then it's time to clean up this app and implement it the rightful way. So in here we have const, this is equal to format URL, and then we pass in the request like this. So we get our method and our path. So inside here, we've gotten our method and our path. What else do we want to do? So we'll start checking. If the path is exactly equal to path index, and the method is exactly equal to HTTP method get, what do we want to do? Handle index route here, handle index route. And then we want to see else if the path is exactly equal to path.auth, and or let's say if it starts, not exactly because we're handling all the other ones, if the path dot starts with path.auth, if it starts with that, then we want to handle auth. Then we pass in the request and then the response. Great, now we can handle our authentication here. And then else, if path.includes this one is notes auth, but then notes, we want to handle notes. We've not implemented the notes route. Else, note found error of response, and then the message of route not found. Great. So now this is our app, and then we've implemented all of this. We want to handle all of this. So now if you make a request to a route that doesn't exist, let's say we say /auth blue like this, and then we send. We have the success is false, and then the message is auth route not found. Okay, so now because it starts with auth, it is forwarding this to the auth route, not in the app. So now let's remove the auth. Let's let it not start with auth. Let it like just be a random something, and then we have route not found. That's great. So we're handling all this in our app. So now that we have auth slash, let's say auth slash sign in, and then we get something here. We have auth route not found, auth http auth slash sign in. Okay, this is a get, and then let's say we have a post here, send, cancel, and then we are logging something on the console here. We have, well, if you check out the route, we're logging the path.out, .auth. So this is the reason why we have a /auth in here. So in our app, we have one more thing to implement. We have not handled the index route. So let's basically handle the index route. So we come over here and write a little bit of logic. Const by name is equal to, I already explained to you that, and that environmental variable by name is not accessible in ES modules. It will throw an error. And then I used it the other time and it threw an error. So that is the reason why we are basically trying to use the import meta URI to get the directory name. So we'll say the directory name is equal to path. We introduce path from node path, path.directory name. We want to extract the directory name from the new URL. That's import meta URL dot path name. So we want to extract the directory from this thing here. So how do we do that? Now that we've extracted the directory, now if you hover over this, that is okay, but the value is never, and the directory is a string. So now that we've extracted that, we create another function, and then if you've ever heard about server-side rendering, maybe you find yourself in a team where they're working on a server-side rendering app like React. React now supports server-side rendering. It sends all its HTML, everything from the server. So now we are sending our HTML file from the server now. It says send HTML. So I love the fact that we're doing this. So we have a basic knowledge of all these things. So now we are beginning to have a basic knowledge of server-side rendering. So now this send HTML will take a request, a response of server response. So what it will do is, and then the HTML it wants to send, the HTML is basically a string. So in here we see response.writeHead, and then the status code is status codes. Okay, I mistakenly imported the status code from Node. Where is it? Okay, let's remove this. This is not what we want. It says status code from content http dot OK. And then the content type, pay attention to content types. They really help. Some of us think they don't have uses. Content type here is the content type is well, we want to send HTML. So the content type for HTML is text/HTML, not text/plain anymore. If you just want to send a plain text, it's text/plain. But since it's HTML, it's text/HTML. And then we'll basically send write the HTML file, the HTML content you want to send, and then we say rest end. We're done sending it. Okay. So now if it is the index path, it's time to read our HTML file. We say const HTML file path is equal to path join, and then the directory name. The directory name we just implemented there, and then we say the path is in the public, the HTML file is in the public directory. Join it, and then we say index HTML. The file, this file is in the public folder, and then look at where our app is. Our app is in the source, is in the root directory. So this will join this name here / source. Okay, let me see. Okay, the name is up. That is my system name. The path, the complete path is to join it with the source / public. No, it's not in the source. The root directory / public, and then / our index HTML. So now that we're getting the HTML path, we want to read the HTML content and then send to the client. So we'll say const HTML file content is equal to fs. Now it's time to import fs. So let me see, import fs from NodeJs. And then fs, since this is just a simple read, we say fs read file sync. And then which file path you want to HTML file path, and then we say the encoding is UTF-8. Say UTF-8 like this. Okay, so now that we have this name, if it is the index route, we want to send we say send HTML. We pass in the response, and then we say HTML contents like this. Wow, this is an achievement, and we should be happy for ourselves. Now we've written a function that sends HTML contents to the client, and then we've written another code here that reads the HTML from the public folder. And now, if you be using Express.js, the static method, this is basically what it does. But we're not using Express, we're using Node. So we're just reading this and then sending it to the. So now let's come over here and then go back to here. And then if you send this, okay, let's remove the forward slash here, send once more. Not found, route not found. Okay, this is a post. It's supposed to be a get method. Let's send it to get and then send it once more. Okay, so this is what we have. We now have HTML, and as you can see, the HTML is, let me just expand this. The HTML content is what we wrote in our HTML file. We have the title of KC notes, and then this one. So if you go over to your browser and then open localhost 8080, kaboom! Now we have our index file being served as HTML to the client. This is sweet. Oh, we're making progress. We're making progress. So now we've handled our index route, and this is very, very sweet. Okay, so now moving on, let's move over. We're not done with our route yet. We have another route to write, and this time around, it is the node route. So in our index file, we can say export from auth, and then we say export handle auth from auth. And then if you come back to our app here, we come up over here and then remove this auth, and then it will work. So we're exporting handle auth from route instead of route / auth. Okay, now we'll copy all of these inbuilt modules and then move it to the top level of our file like this. Okay, so this is now sweet and our code is organized. So now we come back to our notes and then we say export function handle notes takes in a res rec. It's res rec. Okay, now then we say this is incoming message, and then this one is the server response. Okay, res rec. This is rec res. It's rec res, not res rec. Rec res. So we are being rec res right here, right now. Okay, rec res, and then we have our server response. That's great. And then in here we see handle nodes route. This is great. and then we'll come over to our app and then finish up things. Then we'll see handle notes. And then inside of this, we pass our request. Let's know the request right over here. And then we are done with our app. So we've set up our index, and then we can do something more interesting. We can do something more interesting. We can do function server handler, and then inside of this server handler, we basically copy this, bring it over here, and then in here, we copy this, cut it, bring it inside our server handler, and then inside of this, we see server handler, and our app is clean. Now you can abstract this, you can move this anywhere you want, and then your file will look more clean about it. I think this is better. Our app is called HTTP create server, and then we have our server handler that handles all of this. And then our code is more readable and more cleaner. And I'm happy we have a more readable and more cleaner code. This is sweet. Okay, so moving on, we have our node route. So this is time to implement our node route. Before we move on to any other thing, I guess we are following what we have here in our slides. Okay, yes, we are still on the route. Okay, so in the route, this index route that is under controller is supposed to be in the route here, in the index route. And then we've implemented the node found route as well. Okay, so that is great. So now we're still on the route, and then we're moving over to the node route. So in the node route, what do we want to implement in this node route? Okay, so basically the same thing we did in the auth route is the same thing we want to do here. To say const this is equal to format request URL, and then we pass in the rec. This one is a rec. We don't want to be reference, and then we see method and then path. We want to extract this from this. Okay, now we have this. Then we start our checks. So first of all, we have the get node. When we get all the nodes, then we have to get a single node, and then we have to get we have to add node, update node, and then delete node. So we start with the one that gets all the nodes. We say if path is exactly equal to path nodes and method exactly equal to HTTP method get. So now we want to get all the routes. Then we see get nodes. We want to get all the nodes. So we say get nodes. Then we say else, and then we just copy this if that is here, bring it down here, else if, and then we change things. This time around, we want to handle the get node, the single get node route. This and the HTTP is this. So the get node is okay. Let's just handle the add node. So this time around, it is post. If we are in the index route of the nodes, and then the method is post, that is we want to add node. So we say add node like this, and then we say else if. Then this time around, we want to get a single, but we will not say it's exactly because in adding in getting a single node, we want to use an ID. So what we want to do here is say if path starts with if the path starts with nodes, so if path starts with in here we'll interpolate. We see path nodes and then / like this. If it starts with what we're basically saying, if the path if the path starts with this, that is node slash. You know, an ID is coming along with this because we'll be sending an ID with this. So after this, we have something like ID is equal to ID. So to check if it starts with this, that means there's something after this forward slash. So we want to grab that in after the forward slash. And then we'll say get, and if the method, we're not checking for the method, which is wrong. Nope, you see. And the method is exactly equal to HTTP method get. So this is where we want to get. Okay, it should be outside of this. Grab this and then bring it outside like this. Okay, so if the path starts with this and then the method is get, we want to get a single note. Get note like this. We want to get note. Okay, then we'll check else if, nope. Okay, let me just copy this one. Okay, we're dealing with, let me just copy this. And then we'll say else if the method starts with note with a forward slash and the method is patch, we want to update note. We want to update a single note because it will be sent with an ID. Then we want to grab that ID and then update a single note. And then we say else if, let us paste this, and then the method is delete. If it starts with this and the method is delete, here also we want to also grab the ID of the ID of the note and then delete it. So delete note like this. Else, if it matches none of these routes, just say note found error, and then we see back in the response. And then see note route note found like this. Okay, so this is great. So now that we've implemented our note route, it's time to move over to controllers. So moving over to controllers, we don't have any files here yet, and our note route is not completely implemented. So if you move over to controllers, we create alt ts. Then we have another file of note ts, and then we have an index file of index ts. So this is basically how you can organize your project. And then first of all, we start with the auth controllers. So what do we need in the auth controllers? Basically, we defined those methods in the route, but then we did not implement it in the auth controllers. So we have basically functions here that will handle it for us. Export sign up, export function sign up that takes a rec res and then it does nothing. So this rec is an incoming message. TypeScript is complaining that, oh, rec is, but rec has an implicit any type. So we have to specify the type. And then here we say it's a server response. Server response. Where is it? Server response. Okay, here is it. Okay, now we copy this. Paste. So we have sign in. We have the main route. And we have the sign out route. Great. Now we come here and then we export. We can basically do something like export from auth like this. And then we have, wait, is there anything like signing? Okay, it's sign in, no signing. Okay, that's great. So now we're getting an error. We have to change it to sign in. Then we have sign up, we have sign out, and we have the mean route. So basically we can come to our routes here in the auth, and then we see here, now let's just sign up. We handle the sign up here. And then we pass in the rec res. And the TypeScript will complain. Let's remove this. If we head over to our controllers, okay, we've already passed it, so it will not complain. Okay, basically, so here we want to handle the sign in like this. Pass in the rec res. And here we want to handle the main route. As you call the main route, import the main route from controllers, and then expected 2 arguments but got 0. So we have to pass in the rec res as well. And then in here we say sign out rec res like this. Okay, so now we are done with our handle out route. We don't have anything to do with this route again, and then we're saying goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Okay, so now let's move to our node route, and then let's move to our node controllers. Now we have our controllers for, our auth. Now we move over to the nodes and then give the nodes its own controllers. So moving to the nodes, we have a export function, which is a get nodes. This one will get all the nodes with the rec res. I don't want to be rec res. This is the incoming message. And then the response is the server response. Why server response? Okay, it is a server response. So we save it, copy this, paste. Okay, then the second one is get note, get a single note. The third one here is add note. The fourth one is update note. And the last one is delete note, like this. Okay, now we can come to our index, and then we say export from notes. And then we see get notes, add notes, update notes, and then delete notes, like this. So if we come over to our route, our note route, and then we'll come over here and then see get notes controllers, and then we pass in the rec res. We'll simply copy this function, bring it over here, paste, and then this one is get notes, the single note, and then we'll also import it from the controllers. We'll come over here. This one is no, this one is this is the get note code, get note, and this one here is add note, like this. Then we'll pass in the rec res. The get note, add note, and here is update note. See, update note, like this, passing the rec res. Another one here is, the last one is delete note, passing the rec res. Wow, so now we are done with our note routes, and then we want to say goodbye, and then we're done with our route. So now we move to the controllers. So before moving to the controllers, we need a utility function. I believe you know what bcrypt is. As you already worked with bcrypt, I believe that you already work with bcrypt. So now we try to build our own bcrypt by using the script function from Node. So let's move to our utils and then create a file, say script ts, and then we'll emulate bcrypt. So in our utils here, we have a script. And then in our script file, what we want to do is we import crypto from node crypto. Okay, now we import promisify from node util. So we want to turn a function into a promise. So what we want to do here is this. We want to say const async script is equal to promisify crypto.script like this. We want to change this script itself is not an asynchronous function. So we want to turn it into an asynchronous function. That's the reason why I say async script. Or you can basically say prefix it with an underscore, but I will just call it an async script. Now we've converted it to a promise. And then make a class. You know, if you want to use bcrypt, you simply say bcrypt hash or bcrypt compare. Okay, so this one we want to say class, then we say a script. So we'll add two static methods to our class. So the first static method will be static async hash. And this hash will take in a password. Hash will take in a password of string. So it's taking a password of string. So now we want to hash our password. So what do you say? Now, basically in bcrypt, you have a salt. This is salt, it's a string. And then you come over here, and then you do your thing, you do something like, let's move on. You see, const buffer is equal to await async script, and then we want to hash our password. Then we pass in async script. We pass in our password. Then we say 64. See, if you check the async script, you have arg1, which is crypto binary like, and then we have arg2, the crypto binary like, and then arg3 is a number. Okay, so basically what we do here is we basically say we pass in the password, the salt. We want to hash our password and then generate a random sort and then add to it, and then 64. Okay, basically base 64, and then we see as buffer, because we want to do this and then turn this to a buffer, the 64 buffer, and then we see return a string. What we are returning here is a string, and let's interpolate this, and then we see buffer to string, and then we say hexadecimal, and then we'll join it with our salt, the salt we generated, and here we say salt. So since we don't want to go ahead generating salt outside, we basically come here and we say const salt is equal to crypto.random bytes, and then we say it should generate 8 random bytes dot to string in hexadecimal form. It should generate 8 random bytes in hexadecimal. So let's remove this parameter of salt here. It should generate it and then add it to our password. So we are now emulated the bcrypt hash function. So this is basically how to hash our password. Now we have another method, static async compare. We have a bcrypt function that compares. So now we have the stored password and then the supplied password. They are both string. This is a string, and this one over here is also a string. So what we want to do here is we want to compare, we want to split it. You know, when we are joining it, we're joining it with the dots, the actual encrypted password, and then the sort we generated. So we say const, return an array with two things. We say stored password dot split. We want to split it where the dot is, and then we get the first thing is the password, and then the second one, let's say p-word, and then the second one is the sort. This is the second thing. And then what we want to do here is we want to say const buffer is equal to await async script. Okay, this async script, this is the supplied pass, this is the password salt 64 as buffer. And then we want to compare. We want to compare. So we'll say return stored password is exactly equal to buffer dot to string hex. Okay, so now let's explain what's going on here. You know, when you hash this password, it's in hexadecimal form. So now we have this is p-word. The p-word we are grabbing from this array. So now we have this buffer. What we are trying to do is when you hash this password like this, it is the same thing as doing this, because the salt here is the same. We have the salt, okay. Salt. Let's see. Let's grab this. Bring it over here. Const salt. Or let's move it outside. Okay, salt. Okay, now we have the salt. We have the salt here. Now we've supplied the salt. We don't need to supply it explicitly. Now, when you hide this password with this salt, it is the same thing. If you do this thing here, it will give you the same result as this. So when you hash it and then you store in your database, the next time the user wants to log in, you will the stored password from the database, you will grab it, because the compare function takes the password from the database and the one that the user just supplied. So you grab the one from the database, you split it where this dot is, and then you bring out the password. And then this sort, let's undo this. Let's undo this, because the salt is coming from this one we just splitted. So we get the salt from here, and then we'll hash another password with the one we grab from here. With the salt, we also grab from this stored password. So after hashing it, and then we compare the password we returned from this stored password and the one we just hashed. So if it is the same, and then that means the password from the database and the one the user just supplied is the same. And then we say export class of script. So we're out of time, and then this will have to be the end of our class for today. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and ask. And then in our next class, we will implement the remaining functionalities of our application, and then we will complete it. But I'm sorry to say we are not hosting this application. We're not moving it into production due to time factor. And then after this, we will introduce Prisma. After Prisma, we'll take a day for Prisma, and then that is a week for Prisma and Docker. 1 week, one day for Prisma and 1 day for Docker, since we don't have time. And then after that, we'll move straight to Nest.js. But this, in our next class, which we hold on Friday, we will complete this app. We will not be testing everything, but after completion, at least we test 1 or 2 functionalities to enable you get acquainted to testing and all of that. So we've come to the end of today's class, and in today's class, we've set up our route, everything, our app. We've restructured our app and see how well structured it is. And then in our route, we've implemented our auth route and our node route as well. Then in our controllers here, we have this. And okay, Obi, you want to say something? You can go ahead.
Yes, I want to appreciate you for the wonderful class. I have
Yes.
three suggestions. One is that for me, everything was like a magic. So after the first class, I spent time on the YouTube to actually study it. At least I understood to the last class. But in this class, I did not get, I was just following. So I want to suggest that you help us upload this one to YouTube so that some of
All
us
the
that
video.
are, some of us that are slow learners can actually go and revisit the whole thing and then try to understand fundamental. That's one pre I make. Number two pre is if there is other external source materials that you think that can help us, just as you sent the other one the other day, you can help us too, so
Yes.
that understanding can increase. And then lastly, I want to pray that you can help us update the doc. Those docs has been so wonderful to my learning. Thank you.
Okay. So, okay, that's no problem. I will try to do that.